The galaxy's most wanted assassin found shelter and redemption in a human's care. The neon lights of Centauri Station cast shifting shadows through the market district's narrow alleys. Nova pressed herself against the cold metal wall, her iridescent scales darkening to match the shadows. The bounty hunters were getting closer. She could hear their heavy boots echoing off the station's worn deck plates. 10 million credits. That's what the syndicate had placed on her head, dead or alive, though she suspected they'd prefer dead after what she'd done. A door hissed open nearby. Nova's hand instinctively went to the blade at her hip, but instead of another hunter, a human male stumbled out of what appeared to be a repair shop. He was tall and lanky, with unruly dark hair and a worn leather jacket that had seen better days. Their eyes met. Nova tensed, ready to strike if he raised an alarm. But instead, he raised an eyebrow and gave her an easy smile. "You look like someone who could use a quick exit," he said quietly, nodding toward the shop's entrance. "I got a ship." Nova's eyes narrowed. "Why would you help me?" The human shrugged. "Name's Finn. And let's just say I'm not particularly fond of the folks wearing those uniforms." He gestured vaguely in the direction of the approaching hunters. A plasma bolt sizzled past, scorching the wall where Nova's head had been moments before. She made her decision in an instant, diving through the doorway as Finn slammed the control panel. Inside, the shop was a maze of half-dismantled engines and scattered parts. Finn led her through the chaos with surprising grace, making his way to a loading bay where a battered freighter waited. The name Starcatcher was painted on its hull in fading letters. "She's not much to look at," Finn admitted as they rushed up the boarding ramp, "but she's got it where it counts." Nova didn't have time to argue. The hunters were already breaching the shop's outer door. She followed Finn to the cockpit, watching as his hands flew over the controls with practiced ease. The engines roared to life just as plasma fire began peppering the hull. "Might want to hold on to something," Finn said, his grin never wavering as he punched the throttle. The Starcatcher lurched forward, breaking free of its moorings and shooting out of the bay like a cork from a bottle. Nova gripped the back of the pilot's chair, her sharp claws digging into the worn fabric. "You're insane," she hissed as Finn wove through the station's docking rings at speeds that would make most pilots faint. "Probably," he agreed cheerfully. "But we're still alive." As they cleared the station's gravity well, Nova allowed herself to relax slightly. But she kept her guard up. In her experience, apparently helpful strangers usually had ulterior motives. "Why did you really help me?" she demanded. Finn's expression grew more serious. "Let's just say I know what it's like to be hunted. Sometimes good people end up on the wrong side of the law for the right reasons." He paused, then added, "Plus, you looked like you could use a friend." Nova almost laughed at that. She hadn't had a friend in years, couldn't afford to. But something about this human's earnest demeanor made her want to believe him, even as every instinct screamed not to trust anyone. "I'm Nova," she said finally. "And I should warn you, helping me just made you a target too." Finn's grin returned. "Well then, Nova, I guess we better stick together. At least until we figure out how to get those bounty hunters off your tail." As the Starcatcher streaked into hyperspace, Nova found herself wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake, or found something she didn't even know she was looking for. An ally who saw past her reputation to who she really was. The stars stretched into streaks of light outside the viewport, and for the first time in months, Nova felt something dangerously close to hope. The Starcatcher drifted in the shadow of a massive asteroid, its engines idling as Finn made repairs to the damage sustained during their escape. Nova watched him work from her perch on a cargo container, her sharp eyes tracking his every movement. "You're doing it wrong," she said as he struggled with a damaged power coupling. Finn wiped sweat from his brow, leaving a streak of grease across his forehead. "By all means, if you know a better way." Nova slid down gracefully, taking the tool from his hand. Her scaled fingers moved with precision, reconnecting the delicate wiring in half the time it would have taken him. Finn whistled appreciatively. "Is there anything you're not good at?" he asked. "Trusting people," she replied without hesitation. Finn's usual grin softened into something more genuine. "Fair enough. But you trusted me enough to get on my ship. I was out of options." "Keep telling yourself that," he said, retrieving the tool and moving to the next repair. "So want to tell me why the bounty hunters want you so badly?" Nova tensed. "No. Okay, Finn said easily, surprising her. Most people would have pressed for answers. But if you change your mind, I'm a pretty good listener. Before Nova could respond, the ship's proximity alarm blared. They rushed to the cockpit, where the sensors showed 3 ships emerging from hyperspace. Friends of yours? Finn asked, already powering up the engines. The Syndicate doesn't have friends, Nova replied grimly. Only assets and targets. The pursuing ships opened fire, their plasma bolts illuminating the asteroid field. Finn's hands danced across the controls, guiding the Starcatcher through the chaos with impressive skill. You've done this before, Nova observed as they narrowly avoided collision with a spinning rock. Let's just say I didn't always transport legal cargo, Finn replied, executing a tight turn that brought them behind one of their pursuers. Care to show off your shooting skills? Nova took the weapon's controls, a predatory smile crossing her face. Her first shot disabled the nearest ship's engines, sending it spinning into the asteroid field. The second ship tried to flank them, but Finn anticipated the move, rolling the Starcatcher at the perfect moment for Nova to get a clean shot. As the third ship retreated, Finn let out a whoop of celebration. We make a pretty good team. Nova found herself smiling despite her best efforts not to. You're not completely useless. High praise indeed, Finn laughed. Then his expression grew serious. They're not going to stop coming, are they? No, Nova said quietly. They won't. The small moon where they landed to make repairs was technically uninhabited, though the remains of an abandoned mining operation provided decent cover. As they worked together to patch the Starcatcher's hull, Nova found herself watching Finn more closely. He wasn't like anyone she'd met before. Most humans she encountered were either terrified of her or trying to kill her, but Finn treated her with an easy familiarity that was both refreshing and unsettling. Why aren't you afraid of me? She asked suddenly. Finn paused in his welding, pushing up his protective visor. Should I be? Most people are. Most people don't look past the surface, he said, returning to his work. I've learned that appearances can be deceiving. Nova was quiet for a long moment. I used to be their best assassin, she said finally. The Syndicate found me when I was young, trained me to be their weapon. I was good at it, too good. Finn stopped working but didn't speak, giving her space to continue. Then they ordered me to kill someone, a witness who'd spoken out against them. A child. Nova's voice hardened. I refused, and when they tried to force me, I turned on them instead, killed their top enforcer and destroyed their main data center. That's why they want you dead, Finn said. It wasn't a question. Nova nodded. I know too much, and I proved I couldn't be controlled. Finn set down his tools and turned to face her fully. You did the right thing. Did I? Nova's laugh was bitter. I've killed dozens of people. One moment of conscience doesn't make up for that. Maybe not, Finn agreed. But it's a start, and you're not that person anymore. Before Nova could respond, the ground trembled beneath their feet. They looked up to see 3 massive ships descending through the atmosphere, Syndicate warships. How did they find us? Finn asked, already running for the Starcatcher. They must have tracked our hyperspace signature, Nova said, following close behind. We need to. She never finished the sentence. A plasma blast struck the ground between them, throwing them both off their feet. As Nova struggled to rise, she saw Finn lying motionless several meters away. Finn, she called out, her voice tight with an emotion she didn't want to name. For the first time in years, she felt real fear, not for herself, but for someone else. The warships were landing now, and she could see troops deploying. She had seconds to make a decision: run and survive, or stay and probably die trying to save the first person who'd shown her genuine kindness in years. Nova drew her blade and moved toward Finn's unconscious form. She'd spent too long running. Maybe it was time to stand and fight. Plasma fire rained down around Nova as she dragged Finn's unconscious form behind a fallen piece of mining equipment. His pulse was steady, but a gash on his forehead bled freely. She tore a strip from her shirt to bind the wound, her movements quick but gentle. Wake up, you fool, she muttered. I'm not dying for you just to have you sleep through it. Syndicate troops were advancing in formation, their black armor gleaming in the dim light. Nova counted at least 20, led by a figure she recognized. Commander Vex, her former mentor. His cybernetic eye glowed malevolently, as he spotted her. "Little Nova," he called out, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "Still playing at having a conscience?" Nova didn't reply, instead checking her weapons. One plasma pistol, half charge. Her blade. Not nearly enough for 20 troops. "The human means nothing," Vex continued. "Give yourself up, and we'll make his death quick." Finn stirred, groaning softly. His eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on Nova's face. "Are we dead yet?" he whispered. "Not yet," she replied, relief coloring her voice despite the situation. "Though your timing could be better. Sorry to keep you waiting." He tried to sit up, wincing. "How bad?" 20 troops, heavy weapons, led by someone who knows all my tricks." Finn managed a weak grin. "So, just another day." Despite everything, Nova felt herself smiling. "You're insane. You keep saying that." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small device. "Good thing I'm also prepared. Remember those engine repairs we were doing?" Nova's eyes widened as she recognized the remote detonator. "You rigged the Starcatcher to explode. Always have a backup plan," Finn said, "though I was hoping not to lose my ship today." Before Nova could respond, Vex's voice cut through the air again. "Last chance, little Nova. Surrender or die." Nova looked at Finn, who nodded slightly. She stood slowly, hands raised. "You taught me well, Vex," she called back. "But you forgot one lesson." "Oh." Vex's cybernetic eye whirred as he zoomed in on her. "Always watch your surroundings." Finn hit the detonator. The Starcatcher's engines exploded in a massive fireball, a shockwave knocking the Syndicate troops off their feet. Nova was moving before the debris started falling, her blade finding gaps in armor with deadly precision. Finn provided cover fire with her plasma pistol, his aim surprisingly good despite his injury. In the chaos, Nova fought her way to Vex. Her former mentor was ready, his own blade meeting hers in a shower of sparks. They moved in a deadly dance, each anticipating the other's moves from years of training together. "I made you what you are," Vex snarled as their blades locked. "No," Nova replied. "You tried to make me a monster. I chose to be something else." The fight ended with Nova's blade at Vex's throat, his cybernetic eye dark and lifeless. Around them, the remaining Syndicate troops were either dead or fleeing. The warships had withdrawn after the explosion damaged their landing gear. "Finish it," Vex spat. "Prove you're still the killer I trained." Nova pressed the blade harder, drawing a thin line of blood. Then she stepped back, lowering her weapon. "No, I'm not what you made me anymore." She turned away, walking toward where Finn waited. Behind her, she heard Vex moving, heard the whisper of a hidden blade being drawn. Without looking back, she flicked her wrist, sending her dagger spinning through the air. It struck Vex's chest with perfect accuracy. "But I'm not a fool either," she said softly. Finn was leaning against a piece of wreckage, looking pale but alert. "That was impressive," he said as she approached. "Though I'm sorry about your ship." "Our ship," Nova corrected him. "And we'll find another." His eyebrows rose. "Our ship. Does this mean you're sticking around?" Nova helped him stand, supporting his weight as they began walking away from the battlefield. "Someone has to keep you alive. Besides," she added with a small smile, "we do make a good team." "That we do," Finn agreed. "Though we should probably get off this moon before more Syndicate ships arrive. I know some people who might be willing to help, for the right price. More of your questionably legal contacts." "Hey, they're perfectly legal. Sometimes. Occasionally." He grinned. "Trust me." Nova found herself smiling back. "Against my better judgment, yes." As they made their way toward the abandoned mining facility's communication center, Nova realized something had changed within her. The constant urge to run, to stay isolated, had faded. In its place was something new, a sense of belonging, of purpose. She was no longer just running from her past. She was running toward something better, with someone who saw her for who she really was. And for the first time since she turned against the Syndicate, she felt truly free. The sun was setting over the moon's barren landscape, casting long shadows across the wreckage of their battle. But Nova wasn't watching the shadows anymore. She was looking toward the horizon, toward whatever adventure came next. As long as she had Finn by her side, she was ready to face it. "So," Finn said as they reached the facility, Any preference on our next ship? Nova pretended to think about it. Something that won't explode. His laughter echoed through the empty corridors, and Nova found herself laughing too. They were alive, they were together, and the galaxy was full of possibilities. For an assassin turned fugitive and a smuggler with a heart of gold, it was more than enough.